Alex Green, fresh out of the academy, steps into the patrol car with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. His partner, Rick, is a grizzled veteran who's seen it all and doesn't hesitate to remind Alex of it. "Just follow my lead, kid," Rick says as they drive through the busy streets of Atlanta. Alex's nerves are on edge as they receive a call about a disturbance in a neighborhood known for its high crime rate. The fact that it's a predominantly black neighborhood adds a layer of tension for Alex, who's determined to prove himself but also keenly aware of the racial dynamics at play. As they approach the scene, Rick's nonchalant attitude contrasts sharply with Alex's hyper-awareness. The rookie is eager to do things by the book, but Rick's dismissive comments about the area's residents hint at a deeper, more troubling outlook. Upon arriving, Alex's heart races as he spots a group of young black men gathered near a convenience store. Without hesitation, Rick exits the vehicle and signals for Alex to follow. The older officer's casual approach is unsettling to Alex, who instinctively reaches for his radio, unsure of what to do next. The group notices the officers and begins to disperse, but one of them, David Williams, the son of Captain Williams, remains, watching the officers with an air of defiance. Mistaking the young men's movements as threatening, Alex's anxiety takes over. He shouts commands that escalate the situation, drawing his weapon as Rick watches with a mixture of amusement and disdain. David, caught off guard by the aggressive posture, tries to explain, but Alex is too far gone in his fear to listen. The situation spirals out of control, culminating in Alex forcefully detaining David, while the others shout in protest. The arrest, seen by onlookers, quickly becomes a flashpoint for the community, with bystanders recording the event on their phones. In the aftermath, Alex is shaken to his core. Back at the station, he's met with a mixture of congratulations from some officers and silent judgment from others. The gravity of his mistake begins to dawn on him as he learns who David Williams is. The news of the arrest spreads like wildfire, and by the time Alex arrives home, the story is all over the local media. His initial feelings of pride in handling a dangerous situation are replaced by a growing sense of guilt and confusion. The city reacts with outrage, particularly within the black community, where David's arrest is seen as yet another example of systemic injustice. Protests erupt, and Alex finds himself at the center of a scandal that threatens to not only destroy his career, but also deepen the racial divide in the city. Conflicted and unsure of what to do next, Alex becomes increasingly isolated, struggling to reconcile his intentions with the devastating consequences of his actions. The atmosphere in the meeting room is thick with tension as Alex sits across from his superiors. The room is filled with stern faces, commanders, lieutenants, and legal advisors, all staring at him as if he's the embodiment of the department's worst fears. The precinct's captain, a no-nonsense woman with years of experience under her belt, leads the meeting. "Green, this is a serious situation," she begins, her tone leaving no room for misunderstanding. The department is under intense scrutiny, and Alex's actions have brought them unwanted attention. The message is clear. Alex is to stay out of the spotlight and avoid the media at all costs. They instruct him to lay low, keep his head down, and, above all, remain loyal to the force. The underlying message, however, is more insidious. Protect the department's image at any cost. Alex feels the weight of his mistake bearing down on him as he's dismissed from the meeting. But what stings the most is the unspoken expectation to prioritize the department's reputation over seeking the truth. Later that day, Alex finds himself drawn to the site of a growing protest against police brutality. He stands on the sidelines, trying to blend in, his uniform replaced by civilian clothes. The crowd is large and angry, with signs and chants demanding justice for David Williams. It's here that he first encounters Mia Carter, a fiery investigative journalist known for her relentless pursuit of the truth. Mia is in the thick of it, capturing footage and interviewing protesters. She spots Alex almost immediately, recognizing him from the media coverage. Wasting no time, she approaches him, her voice sharp and accusatory. "You're the rookie who arrested David Williams, aren't you?" she asks, though it's less a question and more a challenge. Alex, caught off guard, stumbles over his words, trying to defend his actions. But Mia isn't interested in excuses. She presses him about Rick's influence and the broader issue of corruption within the force. Her words plant seeds of doubt in Alex's mind. Doubt about his partner, the department, and his role in this escalating crisis. The more Alex thinks about Mia's words, the more uneasy he becomes. That night, unable to sleep, he pores over the events of the past few days. The more he reflects, the more he realizes how much he doesn't know about Rick and the inner workings of the force. His gut tells him something is wrong, but he's torn between his loyalty to the department and his growing sense of moral obligation. Eventually, Alex decides that he can't ignore what's happening, even if it means going against everything he's been taught. He reaches out to Mia, agreeing to meet her and discuss the possibility of uncovering the truth together. Despite his reservations, he feels a strange sense of relief, like a burden has been lifted. The decision marks a turning point for Alex. He's no longer just a rookie cop trying to fit in. He's now a man who has to choose between what's right and what's expected of him, aware that his choices could have serious consequences. As he prepares to meet Mia, he knows there's no turning back. Alex and Mia begin their investigation by diving into the police department's archives, a daunting task given the sheer volume of files and records. They manage to gain access under the guise of researching routine cases, but their true purpose is much more dangerous. The deeper they dig, the more disturbing patterns they uncover. Rick, Alex's partner, has a history littered with complaints, allegations of excessive force, misconduct, and racial profiling. Yet, despite the serious nature of these accusations, Rick has never faced any real consequences. Each complaint was either dismissed or quietly settled, leaving no substantial mark on his record. It's clear that someone within the department has been protecting Rick, covering up his transgressions. Alex feels a growing sense of betrayal as he reads through the documents, realizing that the man he trusted as a mentor might be far more corrupt than he could have imagined. Mia, ever the seasoned journalist, isn't surprised but sees this as the tip of the iceberg. She encourages Alex to keep pushing, believing that there's much more to uncover. Their next lead takes them to a retired police officer who once worked closely with Rick. They meet him in a secluded cafe on the outskirts of the city, where the former cop, a man in his late 60s with a weariness that suggests he's seen too much, hesitates before speaking. Rick always knew how to play the game, he begins, his voice tinged with both resentment and fear. According to him, Rick had an informant within the black community, a man who provided information in exchange for protection from the law. This informant allowed Rick to manipulate situations, ensuring that he came out clean, no matter how dirty the job was. The retired officer hints that this arrangement gave Rick immense power, not just within the police department, but also within the community, where he could make or break people's lives. Alex listens, a mixture of disbelief and horror washing over him. He realizes that Rick's influence extends far beyond what he initially thought, and that this informant could be the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy. As the weight of their discoveries begins to settle in, Alex finds himself at a crossroads. He's torn between the loyalty he feels towards Rick, a man who, despite his flaws, helped him navigate the early days of his career, and the undeniable truth of Rick's corruption. The knowledge that Rick has been using his position to manipulate the system, possibly putting innocent lives at risk, shakes Alex to his core. Mia, sensing his turmoil, urges him to document everything they've found. "We need to have solid evidence before we make any moves," she warns, aware of the danger they're courting. Alex reluctantly agrees, but his fear is palpable. He knows that if Rick finds out what they're doing, the consequences could be dire, not just for his career, but for his life. Despite his fears, Alex begins compiling their findings, creating a detailed record of Rick's abuses and the network of corruption that seems to protect him. Each entry feels like a nail in the coffin of his former life as a naive rookie, and he knows that the path he's on could lead to his destruction. But for now, all he can do is continue forward, hoping that the truth will be enough to bring down Rick and the corrupt system that shields him. After days of investigation and growing tension, Alex returns home, seeking solace in the familiarity of his family. His parents, particularly his father, a retired and highly respected police officer, have always been his moral compass. Sitting at the dinner table, Alex struggles to hide the turmoil he's been experiencing. His father notices immediately. "What's going on, son?" he asks, his tone gentle but probing. Alex hesitates, unsure of how much to reveal. His father's legacy as a good cop, a man who upheld the law with integrity, looms large in his mind. Alex finally confesses his doubts about what it means to be a good police officer, expressing his disillusionment with the force and the corruption he's uncovered. His father listens intently, offering words of wisdom that resonate deeply with Alex. Being a good cop isn't about following orders or protecting your own. It's about doing what's right, no matter the cost, his father advises. These words give Alex a renewed sense of purpose, but they also add to the burden he carries. He knows that following this path could mean going against everything he's been taught, possibly even against his family's expectations. Meanwhile, the situation in Atlanta is deteriorating. The community's anger has reached a boiling point, and protests against police brutality and systemic racism grow more intense by the day. Captain Williams, whose son's arrest ignited the firestorm, steps into the spotlight, delivering a powerful speech that resonates across the city. Standing before a large crowd, Captain Williams speaks not only as a father but also as a leader in the community. He demands justice for his son and all victims of police misconduct, calling out the department's failures and the need for systemic change. His words strike a chord, intensifying the racial divide in the city and putting further pressure on the police force. The speech becomes a rallying cry for those who have long felt oppressed, but it also deepens the isolation Alex feels. He's caught between two worlds: the law enforcement community he's sworn to serve and protect, and the broader community that sees him as part of the problem. As the city edges closer to chaos, Alex realizes that the stakes are higher than he ever imagined. As the tension mounts, Alex becomes increasingly isolated. His colleagues at the precinct treat him with suspicion, sensing his growing discomfort with the status quo. He no longer sees Rick as a mentor, but as a dangerous figure who embodies the worst aspects of the system. Alex's determination to expose the truth solidifies, but it also sets him on a collision course with the people he once considered his allies. He spends sleepless nights preparing for the inevitable confrontation, knowing that the time is coming when he'll have to face Rick and the department's corruption head-on. The more he uncovers, the more he understands the depth of the rot within the system. It's not just about Rick. It's about a culture that has allowed such corruption to flourish unchecked. Despite the growing danger, Alex is resolute. He knows that if he doesn't act, the cycle of abuse and corruption will continue, and more lives will be destroyed. As he prepares to confront Rick, he braces himself for the fallout, aware that his actions could either bring about much-needed change or lead to his own downfall. Alex and Mia continue to dig deeper into the corruption surrounding Rick and the police department. They decide to meet in secret at a small, out-of-the-way cafe, one they hope won't attract attention. The place is quiet, with only a few patrons scattered around, making it an ideal spot to discuss their findings. Over coffee, they lay out the new information they've gathered, trying to piece together the larger picture. Mia has been working her contacts and has come across troubling details about Captain Williams as well. It seems that the captain, despite his public calls for justice, might also be entangled in the web of corruption. There's more to this than just Rick, Mia says, her voice low but urgent. I've got sources saying Williams knew about Rick's activities and turned a blind eye because it benefited him in some way. The revelation hits Alex hard. He had begun to see Captain Williams as a symbol of what was right and just in the system, a father seeking justice for his son. Now, he realizes that the captain might be just as compromised as the others. Together, they formulate a plan to gather more concrete evidence, but the realization that they're up against powerful forces makes the situation all the more dangerous. As they continue their discussion, Mia opens up about her personal motivations for pursuing this story with such determination. She reveals that her brother was a victim of police brutality, an incident that was never properly investigated and that haunts her to this day. I've seen firsthand what happens when the system fails, she says, her eyes reflecting a deep-seated pain. My brother never got justice, and I swore I'd do whatever it takes to make sure other families don't suffer the same way. Her words resonate with Alex, adding a layer of personal connection to their alliance. Mia's story strengthens his resolve, reminding him that this isn't just about uncovering corruption. It's about seeking justice for all those who have been wronged by a broken system. The bond between Alex and Mia deepens as they realize that their fight is not just professional, but deeply personal. They both have something at stake, and it's this shared sense of purpose that drives them forward, despite the growing risks. Their investigation takes a darker turn when Alex receives an anonymous message late at night. The message is simple but chilling: "Stop digging, or you won't like what happens next." The threat is a stark reminder of the danger they're in. Alex's heart races as he reads the words, and a sense of dread settles over him. He immediately contacts Mia, who isn't surprised by the threat but is visibly concerned for their safety. "This means we're getting close," she says, trying to keep a brave face. But the tension in her voice is unmistakable. The threat makes everything more real for Alex. Up until now, he's been driven by a sense of duty and a desire to uncover the truth, but the message brings home the personal risks he's taking. He's not just putting his career on the line, he's putting his life in danger. The realization forces him to confront the reality that there are people within the force, possibly even Rick himself, who will go to great lengths to protect their secrets. Despite the fear, Alex knows he can't back down now. The urgency of their mission is clearer than ever, but so is the peril they face as they continue to unravel the conspiracy. The tension between Alex and Rick has been building, and it finally reaches a breaking point during a routine patrol. The atmosphere in the patrol car is thick with unspoken words as they drive through the city. Rick, sensing that Alex has been distant, tries to make small talk, but Alex is in no mood for pleasantries. He knows that if he doesn't confront Rick now, the opportunity might never come again. Summoning all his courage, Alex breaks the silence. "Rick, we need to talk about what's been going on," he says, his voice tense. Rick glances at him, a hint of suspicion in his eyes. "What do you mean?" Rick asks, feigning ignorance. Alex doesn't back down. He brings up the complaints he discovered in the archives, the evidence of Rick's abuses that have been swept under the rug. Rick's expression darkens, and his demeanor shifts from casual to defensive. "You don't know what you're talking about, kid," Rick snaps, his tone laced with a mix of anger and condescension. But Alex presses on, questioning Rick about his connections in the community and the rumors of his informant. Rick, now visibly agitated, warns Alex to back off. "This isn't how the real world works, Green. You either play the game, or you get played." The conversation ends abruptly as Rick makes it clear that he won't tolerate any more questions. But the encounter only strengthens Alex's resolve to continue his investigation, even if it means going against his partner. After the confrontation, Alex is approached by a fellow officer, someone he's known since his first days at the precinct. The officer pulls Alex aside in the locker room, speaking in hushed tones. "Listen, Alex, you need to be careful," he warns, glancing around to make sure no one is listening. "Rick's got a lot of friends in the department, and they're not going to like what you're doing." The officer's words are both a warning and an offer of advice, but they also carry an undertone of fear. It's clear that Rick's influence extends far beyond what Alex initially thought. The officer mentions that there have been rumors circulating about Alex's involvement with Mia and the investigation. "People are talking, and not in a good way. Just watch your back, all right?" The officer says before walking away, leaving Alex to ponder the implications of his actions. The warning weighs heavily on Alex. He realizes that he's not just facing Rick, but an entire system that's built to protect its own. The sense of isolation grows as he begins to question whom he can trust within the force. The walls seem to be closing in, and Alex knows that every move he makes from this point forward will be under scrutiny. With each passing day, the pressure on Alex mounts. He's constantly looking over his shoulder, wondering if the next person he encounters will be friend or foe. The once comforting routine of police work has turned into a minefield, where every interaction could lead to danger. The trust he once had in his colleagues has eroded, replaced by suspicion and fear. As Alex continues to work alongside Rick, the tension between them becomes unbearable. Alex can feel Rick's eyes on him, watching his every move, as if waiting for him to slip up. The paranoia begins to take its toll, making it harder for Alex to concentrate, to think clearly. He knows that Rick is aware of his investigation, and the looming threat of retaliation hangs over him like a dark cloud. Despite the pressure, Alex refuses to give up. He's come too far to turn back now. The danger he's in only reinforces the importance of what he's doing. But the more isolated he becomes, the more he begins to question his own judgment. How much longer can he keep this up? Can he really trust Mia? Or is she just using him for her own gain? And most importantly, is he ready to face the consequences of exposing the truth? These questions swirl in Alex's mind as he prepares for the next phase of his journey, knowing that the stakes are higher than ever. Alex and Mia's investigation leads them to a crucial lead. An informant who might hold the key to unraveling the entire web of corruption involving Rick and possibly Captain Williams. This informant is someone with deep ties to both the police force and the community, a person who has been operating in the shadows for years. After several days of tracking down leads, they finally managed to arrange a meeting at a local bar, a gritty, dimly lit place where no one asks questions. The air inside the bar is thick with the smell of cigarettes and cheap alcohol, adding to the tension of the situation. Alex and Mia arrive early, choosing a booth in the back where they can see the door. They sit in silence, each lost in their thoughts, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on them. When the informant finally arrives, he's a man in his late 40s, with a weary look in his eyes and a nervous energy about him. He slides into the booth, glancing around to ensure they're not being watched. "You've been digging in dangerous places," he says, his voice low and cautious. Alex leans in, his heart pounding with anticipation. The informant begins to spill what he knows, confirming their suspicions about Rick's involvement in a network of corruption that extends beyond just one rogue officer. What they hear next, however, sends chills down their spines. The informant reveals that Captain Williams, who has publicly portrayed himself as a victim seeking justice for his son, might actually be complicit in Rick's illegal activities. According to the informant, Williams has been aware of Rick's actions for years and has turned a blind eye in exchange for Rick's cooperation in keeping certain aspects of the community under control. The arrangement has allowed Williams to maintain a delicate balance between his duties as a police captain and his loyalty to his community. The informant suggests that Williams might have even used Rick to deal with problems discreetly, ensuring that certain individuals or issues never reach the public eye. Alex and Mia are stunned by the revelation. If true, it means that the very man leading the charge for justice might be hiding his own secrets. The informant continues, providing details about specific incidents that were covered up, implicating both Rick and Williams. He hands over a few documents, but before they can delve deeper into the conversation, the atmosphere in the bar shifts. Alex notices a group of men enter the bar, their eyes scanning the room, and his instincts scream danger. Before they can gather more information, the informant suddenly stiffens, his eyes widening in fear. "We've been followed," he mutters, his voice barely above a whisper. The men who entered the bar make a beeline for their booth, and it becomes clear that they're not here for a drink. Alex and Mia have no time to think. They have to act. "We need to go now," Alex says, grabbing the documents and motioning for Mia to move. The informant hesitates, but fear drives him to follow. They slip out of the booth and make a break for the back exit, pushing through the kitchen and out into the alley. The sound of footsteps behind them tells Alex that they're being chased. The alley is narrow, and the only light comes from a flickering street lamp at the far end. They run, the informant breathing heavily, but just as they reach the street, the informant is tackled by one of the men. Alex turns back, but Mia pulls him forward, knowing they can't stop. "We have to go," she shouts. They flee into the night, leaving the informant behind. As they disappear into the shadows, the weight of what they've uncovered, and the danger they're in, presses down on them. They've crossed a line, and there's no going back now. The informant's fate hangs in the balance, but Alex and Mia know that if they don't keep moving, they could be next. After narrowly escaping the attack at the bar, Alex and Mia find refuge in a safe house, a small, nondescript apartment that Mia has used before during dangerous investigations. The place is bare, with only the essentials: a couple of chairs, a table, and a mattress on the floor. The adrenaline from the chase still courses through their veins, making it hard to relax. Alex paces the room, his mind racing as he tries to process the night's events. Mia, always pragmatic, starts organizing the documents they managed to grab, trying to find something concrete that could expose Rick and Captain Williams. "We're in deep now," she says, not looking up from the papers. "They know we're onto them, and they're not going to stop until we're silenced." Alex knows she's right. The fear that has been building inside him is now a cold, hard reality. They've crossed into dangerous territory, and the people they're up against won't hesitate to eliminate threats to their power. But as much as the fear grips him, Alex also feels a renewed sense of determination. They're close to uncovering the truth, and he knows that backing down now isn't an option. They sit down together, debating their next move, aware that every decision they make from this point on could be a matter of life and death. As they go through the documents, they find pieces of evidence that suggest a larger, more complex network of corruption than they initially thought. Rick and Captain Williams are just parts of a bigger machine that has been operating for years, possibly involving other high-ranking officials in the city. Mia's investigative instincts kick into high gear. She suggests that their best course of action might be to take the information to the media. "We can't do this alone," she argues. "If we go public, it'll be harder for them to silence us. We need to expose everything we've found." But Alex is hesitant. The thought of going public terrifies him. He's seen what happens to whistleblowers, how their lives are torn apart, how they're discredited and isolated. He knows that once they take this step, there's no turning back. His mind races through the potential consequences, losing his career, his friends, possibly even his life. But as he looks at the evidence before them, he knows that staying silent would be even worse. They can't let this corruption continue unchecked. The weight of their decision hangs heavy in the room as they prepare to take the biggest risk of their lives. Just as they finalize their plan, Alex's phone rings. The number is blocked, but he answers it, his heart pounding in his chest. On the other end is Rick, his voice calm but laced with menace. "You need to stop, Green," Rick warns, his tone making it clear that this isn't a suggestion. "You don't know what you're getting into. If you keep pushing, you're going to get hurt. Or worse." The threat sends a shiver down Alex's spine, but it also solidifies his resolve. Rick's words confirm what he already knew, that they're on the right track, and that the people they're up against are scared. Alex doesn't respond to the threat, instead hanging up the phone and turning to Mia. "We need to move fast," he says, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. They pack up their things, preparing to leave the safe house and take their findings to the media. The tension is palpable as they step out into the night, knowing that every shadow could be hiding a threat. But they also know that they can't let fear stop them now. They've come too far to turn back, and the truth is too important to keep hidden. The day of reckoning arrives sooner than expected. Alex and Mia have decided to hold a press conference to reveal the evidence they've gathered. The venue is a modest community center in one of the neighborhoods most affected by the tensions between the police and the community. As they prepare to go public, Alex's nerves are at an all-time high. He knows that by stepping forward, he's putting everything on the line: his career, his safety, and his future. The room fills up quickly with reporters, community leaders, and concerned citizens, all eager to hear what Alex has to say. The atmosphere is electric, with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety hanging in the air. Mia stands by his side, offering silent support. When the moment comes, Alex steps up to the podium, his hands trembling slightly as he grips the microphone. He takes a deep breath and begins to speak, recounting the events that led him to this point. He describes the arrest of David Williams, the discovery of Rick's corruption, and the connections to Captain Williams. With each revelation, the crowd reacts with a mix of shock and anger. Alex can feel the weight of their expectations bearing down on him, but he pushes through, determined to get the truth out. By the time he finishes, the room is buzzing with energy, the crowd divided between those who support him and those who are outraged by what they've heard. The aftermath of the press conference is immediate and intense. The city erupts in a wave of protests, with people taking to the streets in even greater numbers than before. The racial divide that has been simmering beneath the surface now boils over, with clashes between protesters and police becoming more frequent and violent. The media coverage of Alex's revelations adds fuel to the fire, with news outlets picking up the story and spreading it far and wide. The public is polarized. Some view Alex as a hero, a whistleblower who dared to expose the truth, while others see him as a traitor, someone who has betrayed the force and put lives at risk. The police department itself is thrown into turmoil, with internal investigations being launched and officers being placed on administrative leave. The tension within the department mirrors the chaos in the streets, with lines being drawn between those who support Alex and those who view him as a threat. As the city teeters on the brink of chaos, Alex finds himself caught in the middle, unsure of what comes next but knowing that there's no turning back. Just as Alex begins to brace himself for the fallout, he receives an unexpected phone call. The voice on the other end is calm and composed, yet carries an urgency that immediately grabs his attention. "I have information that you'll want to hear," the caller says. "Meet me at the old warehouse on the south side. You're not alone in this." The call ends abruptly, leaving Alex with more questions than answers. The possibility of an ally within the force, or at least someone willing to help, gives him a glimmer of hope. He knows that going to the meeting is a risk, but at this point, he's willing to take it. With Mia by his side, he heads to the designated location, a rundown warehouse that has long been abandoned. The area is eerily quiet, and as they approach the building, Alex's heart races with anticipation and fear. Inside, they find a figure waiting in the shadows, someone who steps forward and reveals themselves as a longtime colleague of Alex's, a fellow officer he never would have suspected. The officer explains that they've been gathering their own evidence against Rick and Captain Williams and are willing to testify. The revelation is a game changer. For the first time, Alex feels that they might actually have a chance to bring down the corrupt network. But with this new ally comes the realization that the stakes have never been higher, and the danger they face is more real than ever. The tension in the warehouse is palpable as Alex and Mia listen to the informant's story. The officer, a man Alex has known and trusted for years, reveals the depth of the corruption that has plagued the police force. "I've seen it all," the officer begins, his voice low and steady. He explains how Rick and Captain Williams have been running a protection racket for years, using their positions to shield criminal activities in exchange for kickbacks and favors. The officer had turned a blind eye to it for too long, but recent events pushed him to take a stand. "I couldn't live with it anymore," he confesses. "And when I saw what they did to you, Alex, I knew it was time to act." The officer presents evidence, documents, recordings, and even names of other officers involved in the scheme. It's a goldmine of information, enough to expose the entire network. Alex is stunned. He always suspected Rick, but hearing that Captain Williams, a man who had publicly called for justice, was deeply involved in the corruption is almost too much to bear. The realization that this goes beyond just a few bad cops, that it's systemic and far-reaching, hits him hard. But with this new evidence, Alex knows they finally have a chance to bring it all down. The question now is how to proceed without getting themselves killed. The climax of the story comes during a large protest in the city, where tensions are at their peak. Alex, Mia, and the informant decide to use the opportunity to publicly reveal the evidence they've gathered. The protest, which was originally organized to demand justice for David Williams, now becomes the stage for exposing the entire corrupt operation. As they approach the protest, the atmosphere is electric, with thousands of people gathered, chanting and holding signs. The anger and frustration are palpable, but so is the hope that this moment could bring real change. Just as they're about to step forward, Rick suddenly appears, flanked by a few other officers. His expression is cold and calculating as he tries to intimidate Alex and Mia. "You think you can take us down?" Rick sneers, his voice dripping with menace. But before Rick can act, the informant steps forward, surprising everyone. In a bold move, he begins to speak to the crowd, revealing his identity and detailing the corruption within the force. His testimony is powerful, and the crowd quickly turns its attention to him. Rick, realizing that he's losing control of the situation, tries to stop him, but the crowd swells, pushing back against the officers. The scene is chaotic, with emotions running high, but the truth is finally out in the open. The protest transforms into a call for action, with the crowd demanding immediate accountability. As the dust settles, Alex discovers a shocking twist that changes everything he thought he knew. Through a series of revelations, it becomes clear that Captain Williams, in an effort to protect his son and his own reputation, had orchestrated the entire incident that led to David's arrest. Williams had manipulated the situation to divert attention from his own corrupt activities, using Alex as an unwitting pawn in his game. The truth devastates Alex. Everything he's fought for, every decision he's made, was based on a lie. Captain Williams had used him to cover up his own crimes, and in doing so, had nearly destroyed Alex's life. Now, faced with the full extent of the truth, Alex must make a final, fateful decision. He could expose Captain Williams, ensuring that justice is served, but at the cost of further inflaming the city and possibly endangering more lives. Or he could walk away, preserving his own safety but allowing the captain to escape full accountability. In the end, Alex chooses justice. He takes the evidence to the authorities, ensuring that both Rick and Captain Williams are brought to trial. The decision brings closure, but it also changes Alex forever. He knows that his career in the police force is over, but he finds solace in the fact that he did the right thing. As the city begins to heal, Alex reflects on the journey he's been through, the lessons learned, the alliances forged, and the personal sacrifices made. He may have lost his old life, but he's gained a new understanding of what it truly means to serve and protect.